Welcome back to the deep dive. We are really moving past the surface level today, getting right into the actual mechanics, the code, you could say, of what turns a talented producer, someone who, already has the fundamentals down pat, into a genuine certified industry pro.
Exactly. We know who you are listening out there. You've put in those hours. Your theory's solid. Your Cubase workflow's probably pretty quick, right? And your beats, they knock. They definitely groove.
Yeah, they sound good.
Yeah.
But there's that wall, that barrier.
That thing stopping your tracks from hitting that cinematic, broadcast-ready standard, the sound you hear in trailers, big ad campaigns. You try to break into sync, but the music, it just isn't getting the traction it deserves.
So today we're doing a massive deep dive into what looks like a systematic solution, a really structured approach to that exact problem. We're unpacking an immersion program called Hybrid Orchestration for Hip Hop and Rock in Cubase Sync Ready.
And let's be clear, this isn't, just another course on layering some MIDI strings. Not at all. The core promise here is big. A complete transformation. Moving you from generic beats to cinematic sync-ready bangers.
Sync-ready bangers. I like the sound of that.
It's about applying, and I love this phrase, they use Tesla-level precision to your composing, your arranging, your mixing.
So our mission today is to really dissect this 12-week structure, get into the methodology, the nuts and bolts of how this immersion aims to manufacture that transformation.
Yeah.
How it turns, solid producers into potential sync placement powerhouses.
Right. We're not just talking basic beat making anymore. This is about, as the course puts it, orchestrating a hybrid hip-hop rock cue with precision. That last word is key. Precision.
Let's start with the why. Because that frustration, it's almost universal, isn't it? Especially for producers in these high-impact genres like rock, like hip-hop. You've got this core beat, it's powerful, it hits hard, and you think, okay, this needs drama, needs that cinematic feel. So you pull up your favorite orchestral library strings, brass, maybe some huge drums.
Yeah, the usual suspects.
And you try layering it in. You're expecting, like, instant Hollywood, epicness on demand.
And instead, mud. Clutter.
Exactly. Muddy low mids, rhythms fighting each other, and somehow the original punchier beat just disappears. It's deflating.
Well, that gap exists because you're fundamentally dealing with sonic conflicts, frequency clashes, dynamic range issues, and you're trying to solve a systematic problem with, frankly, random tips.
Right.
And the course description really nails the core struggles. First, like you said, producers are relying on fragmented info, those random YouTube tutorials. Add strings over your beat.
Yeah, helpful.
It's useless. It doesn't tell you how to make those strings work when your distorted guitars are screaming in the same frequency range, or how the brass fits with an 808 pattern. It's just incomplete.
It's like that analogy they use mixing random household cleaners. You might get a sound, maybe even an interesting one, but you haven't engineered a product that meets industry specs.
Precisely. And the other key struggle, the big one this course seems built to solve, is that lack of a systematic framework. A repeatable method for blending these really different sonic worlds.
You mean the tight percussive drive of hip-hop or the aggressive edge of rock?
With the wide sweeping dynamics of an orchestra, and doing it without losing that core groove. That's the tightrope walk.
It really is a sonic traffic management problem, isn't it? You bring in these huge orchestral sounds, sustained notes, big chords.
And they just fill up space, especially that crucial mid-range where your rock guitar lives or your main hip-hop synth needs definition.
If you don't know exactly how to carve out space, EQ-wise, arrangement-wise,
you get mud, sonic mud. The system taught here seems to be about defining those territories, making sure the brass has its spot, the strings have theirs, and they don't trample all over the original genre's feel. It's about coexistence.
Okay, so fixing the sound is one thing, but then there's the commercial barrier. The course calls it misunderstanding the sync-ready blueprint. For our listeners who are often great musicians, what does that actually mean? What are those purely functional requirements the sync market demands?
This is critical. It goes way beyond just sounding good. It's about utility for the person cutting picture, the editor. The blueprint demands functional structure, first and foremost, meaning things like clear edit points. Those moments in the track, often silences or clean hits, where an editor can easily cut in or out or transition to a different cue. Your track needs those built-in breakpoints.
Okay, practical.
Then, shaping really intentional dynamic arcs. Not just getting loud and quiet, but building tension purposefully, hitting a climax that means something visually, and knowing when and how to release that tension. It has to serve the story.
Right, matching the on-screen narrative.
And maybe most importantly for placement, achieving a very specific commercial mix balance. It needs to sound big and powerful, yes, but also transparent enough to sit under dialogue, voiceovers, sound effects, without needing to be aggressively ducked or becoming abrasive. It needs clarity, even when it's huge.
So if your track isn't functional in those ways, even if it sounds amazing on its own.
It's not getting placed. Simple as that. It's not usable for them.
And this brings us to Cubase. The course description points out that many users, even advanced ones, might be fighting their own tools, not really leveraging Cubase's, frankly, immense orchestration features.
Oh, absolutely. They're getting lost in the complexity, maybe. Trying to achieve epic, but ending up with clutter because the workflow isn't optimized for this specific hybrid task.
It seems almost tragic having all that power under the hood, very audio, expression maps, those complex routing options.
And not using them to streamline a hybrid workflow. It just leads to inefficiency, messy projects, frustration. This systematic approach isn't just about the music theory, it's about engineering that larger-than-life sound within Cubase so efficiently that it screams commercial viability.
Because it's built to spec, built for the editors, for the supervisors.
Exactly. Built to the technical and structural specifications they need globally.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem. That gap between a good track and a plackable track. Let's dig into the how. The course's design philosophy, they call it immersion learning, like learning a language by, well, living there.
Right, not just reading the grammar book.
How does this methodology specifically help an advanced producer, someone probably short on time, tackle this complex challenge?
Well, it seems built around what they call the multimodal advantage. The idea is to hit learning from multiple angles, catering to different styles, and frankly, eliminating excuses about not having time or the right format.
Okay, break that down. Multimodal.
Yeah, so if you're a visual learner, you get this huge chunk, 24 hours of detailed video breakdowns. And these aren't just surface-level things. They're showing step-by-step reconstructions of actual industry-level hybrid cues, all done inside Cubase. You see it happen.
24 hours of seeing the process.
Yeah.
That's substantial.
Yeah.
But you mentioned time constraints. People are busy.
Exactly. So for the auditory learner or just the producer who needs to learn on the go, maybe commuting at the gym, whatever, there are 24 hours of audio learning too. This lets you absorb the concepts, the theory, the why behind the orchestration choices, even when you're away from the screen, maximizing that non-studio time.
That makes sense. Video for the how, audio for the why. What about analytical types, people who need the map?
They've got that covered too. Detailed text blueprints, orchestrational maps, like architectural drawings for the music, and visual score mock-ups. So you can literally see the structure, the arrangement laid out.
So you see where the brass comes in, how the strings are layered.
Precisely. It takes away that guesswork of, okay, where should the tension peak? What harmony drives this section? You see the structural logic before you even load a VST.
Now, this next part sounds really interesting, maybe even genuinely groundbreaking in this context. The support system, particularly the AI orchestration coach. A personal GPT. That sounds different.
It really does. This feels like a step beyond just watching videos or reading PDFs. It addresses potentially the biggest bottleneck in learning complex skills like orchestration, waiting for feedback.
How so?
Well, imagine you're working on a tricky bit, say layering some fast string pattern spiccato against a complex hip-hop hi-hat rhythm, and it just sounds messy, the rhythms clash, or the harmonies muddy.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Instead of waiting days, maybe a week for a mentor or a forum response, the idea here is the AI coach could instantly analyze your MIDI, maybe pinpoint the clashing rhythm or the specific notes in the string voicing causing harmonic issues, and suggest a fix right there, in the moment.
Wow. Instant orchestration feedback. That could radically accelerate the learning curve.
Totally. It potentially turns the learning from reactive, oh, I messed up, now I wait, to proactive and iterative. You try something, get instant feedback, adjust, try again. Much faster cycle.
And it's not just AI, right? There's a human element too.
Yeah, the structure includes community collaboration. So you're not just learning theory, you're applying it in practice, building cues with other people in the course. That's essential for solidifying the skills, that sort of kinesthetic, hands-on practice.
So all these elements, the multimodal content, the AI coach, the community, they wrap this up in a concept they call the Tesla-style methodology. What's the core idea there? Precision engineering.
Exactly. It's framing music production not as random inspiration, but as a systematic engineered process. They talk about an 8-station process designed to find and eliminate every weak spot in your workflow, from initial concept to final delivery.
Like an assembly line for quality control.
Kind of, yeah. It's about ensuring systematic excellence, predictable, high-quality results. Not just learning how to use Cubase, but being trained to apply this Tesla-level precision to get that specific sync-ready outcome every time.
All right, let's dedicate some serious time now to the heart of this thing, the 12 modules. This is the roadmap. We've broken them down into 4 logical phases: foundation, workflow, the hybrid elements themselves, and finally, industry delivery.
Sounds good, because the value is really in the detail of each step. Let's kick off with Phase 1, setting the cinematic foundation. Modules 1 through 3. So Module 1. Introduction to hybrid orchestration. This seems pretty crucial for just setting the stage correctly. It's not just mixing hip-hop and strings. It's defining what hybrid orchestration actually means in the specific context, hip-hop and rock.
Establishing the ground rules.
Yeah, and confirming Cubase is the central hub for everything that follows. But most importantly, it draws that clear line in the sand. Here's a generic beat, and here's a sync-ready asset, defining the target, the performance standard, right from the start.
Okay, sets the benchmark. Then, Module 2, foundations of hip-hop and rock production. Now, I gotta ask the question our listeners might be thinking, hang on, I already know how to make beats. My drums knock, my guitars sound good. Is this going back to basics?
That's a fair question, and it's exactly why this module is likely essential even for advanced producers. See, your beat might sound great on its own, but orchestration, it's like putting your groove under a microscope.
House.
When you start layering potentially dozens of complex orchestral parts on top, any tiny inconsistencies in your core rhythm, the kick timing, the bass pocket, the swing, they get magnified massively. If that foundation isn't absolutely rock solid, dynamically controlled, the whole thing can start to feel sloppy real fast.
So it's about ensuring the original groove can actually support the weight of the orchestra.
Precisely. It's about reinforcing that core programming, the bass lines, the rhythmic intensity, so it's so tight, so controlled, that the orchestral layers sit on top and enhance it, rather than clashing with it or overwhelming it. It's about preserving that genre authenticity under pressure, stress testing the foundation, like you said earlier.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, foundation solid. Then comes Module 3, which feels like a real mindset shift. Module 3, the cinematic mindset, moving from just producer to storyteller.
Exactly. This sounds like the aha module for a lot of people. It's where you learn to think less about loops and sections and more about narrative arc, about emotional impact.
And they mentioned a technique called emotional mapping. What does that entail practically? How do you map emotion?
Well, think of it like creating a blueprint for the feeling of the track, tied to a potential scene. You learn to define the core emotion. Is it tension, excitement, dread? Then you map out the journey. Where does attention start? Where does it build? Critically, where is the absolute peak, the climax, and how does it resolve, or does it?
So you're designing the dynamic arc based on feeling.
Yes, and translating specific visual storytelling needs into sound. The course teaches how to use orchestral colors, the specific sounds of instruments or sections, as enhancers. For example, knowing that low, dark woodwinds like bassoons or contrabassoons can instantly signal unease or dread.
So you might layer that subtly under a sparse hip-hop beat to completely change the mood.
Exactly. Or knowing that soaring high strings evoke hope or triumph. It's about choosing sounds based on their narrative function, their emotional connotation, not just because they sound cool. It's thinking like a composer for picture.
Okay, Phase 2 seems to get really practical. We've got the mindset, now let's build the machine. Module 4, Cubase workflow for hybrid production. This tackles that efficiency problem we talked about, dealing with potentially hundreds of tracks, huge libraries. Workflow can become a nightmare. How does this module promise a speed shortcut?
This is all about saving time and mental energy, which is gold when you're orchestrating. It starts with providing specialized project templates. Think Cubase projects already set up, pre-routed for massive track counts, typical of hybrid queues.
So group channels already configured for orchestra, drums, rock elements.
Exactly. Separate buses for strings, brass, percussion, guitars, synths, vocals maybe. All the routing done, maybe even with some basic EQ or compression slots ready. Huge time saver. But the real efficiency gains probably come from mastering Cubase's deeper tools.
Like what specifically?
VST expression maps are huge for orchestral work. Instead of constantly opening your string library's interface to switch from legato to staccato to pizzicato, expression maps let you assign those articulations to specific MIDI notes or symbols right in the key editor. Massively speeds things up.
Okay, controlling articulations directly in the timeline.
Yeah. And then there are Cubase macros, learning to create custom keyboard shortcuts for complex, repetitive tasks. Like, imagine a single key press that freezes all your CPU-hungry orchestral VSTs, or another that switches your screen layout instantly from the arrangement view to the mix console.
Little things that add up to hours saved.
Absolutely. It's about removing friction, maximizing the time you spend being creative, not wrestling with the DAW. Pure production currency, like you said.
All right. DAW optimized, foundation strong. Now the blending really begins at the core rhythm section. Module 5, drum and percussion power layers. This sounds like where hip-hop meets epic. How do you actually merge, say, a tight, punchy hip-hop kick with the boom and resonance of a massive taiko drum without it turning into low-end mush?
That's the million-dollar question in hybrid percussion. It's a delicate balancing act of frequency and dynamics. This module apparently digs into the how. Layering techniques are key. Taking the precise, often heavily processed transients of hip-hop kicks, snares, maybe layered claps, crisp hi-hats, and strategically blending them with the sustain and sheer size of cinematic percussion, those taikos, huge concert toms, impacts, maybe metallic hits.
So it's not just throwing them together.
No way. You need meticulous attention to phase alignment, making sure the waveforms don't cancel each other out in the low end. Techniques like transient shaping on the hip-hop elements to make sure their initial punch cuts through the density of the epic percussion.
And maybe sidechaining.
Oh, almost certainly. Side-chaining the cinematic elements to the hip-hop kick or snare, so the big stuff ducks out just for a millisecond, letting the core beat punch through clearly. The goal is this unified, massive rhythmic drive.
But it still has to sound clear and punchy, not just loud and messy.
Exactly. And critically, it needs to be a sync-friendly rhythmic foundation, meaning it holds up even after broadcast compression or being mixed low under dialogue. It can't fall apart sonically.
Got it. And since this is hybrid hip-hop and rock, Module 6, rock energy and electric grit needs to bring in that live, distorted power without wrecking the mix.
Yeah, rock energy often comes from distortion, saturation, that harmonic richness, but uncontrolled distortion is the enemy of dynamic range, which we know is vital for sync. So this module is about managing that power. Controlled chaos.
How do you control distorted guitars in a cinematic context?
Well, it covers the practicalities first. If you're recording live guitars, techniques to get maximum punch and clarity before distortion, or if you're using samples or VSTs, how to program them to sound authentic and energetic. Then focusing on the bass lines, making sure the rock bass locks rhythmically with that complex hybrid percussion bed we just talked about.
Makes sense. And the distortion itself.
This is where the advanced techniques come in. Things like multi-band saturation, so you're only adding that grit and harmonics to specific frequency ranges, maybe the mids and highs, while keeping the low end tight and clean. Or using dynamic EQ to tame resonant frequencies that pop out when you distort things heavily.
So the goal is grit and power, but clarity too.
Exactly. Retain the rock energy, but make sure it remains sync-friendly. It can't just be a wall of noise that obscures everything else, especially dialogue frequencies. It needs its space, but it needs to be defined.
Okay, phase 3. We've built this powerful hybrid rhythmic foundation. Now we layer on the orchestral drama and polish, starting with Module 7, orchestral strings for modern production. You often think of sweeping, long string notes in film scores. Why does this module emphasize moving beyond just legato for hybrid tracks?
Because in a dense, modern mix, especially with driving hip-hop or rock elements, those long, lush legato lines can very quickly turn into sonic mush. They fill up too much space, wash out the rhythm.
So what's the alternative for energy?
Rhythmic drive. This module seems laser-focused on using strings for momentum. It dives deep into the strategic use of short versus long articulations. We're talking about aggressive, punchy shorts, staccatos, spiccatos, those sounds where the bow bounces off the string.
Using them rhythmically.
Exactly. Building string ostinatos. Those repetitive, often quite simple, rhythmic patterns that just churn underneath everything else. They create tension, create momentum, drive the track forward without needing a big, complex melody that might clash with the main beat or vocal.
So short strings for rhythm layered with other things.
Yeah, the course details how to layer these short string patterns effectively with maybe pulsing synths or even syncopated guitar riffs, creating this dense, dramatic, rhythmic texture that's still perfectly locked into the main groove. It's about adding energy and complexity without sacrificing clarity.
Okay, strings driving the rhythm. Then for the really big moments, the trailer hits. Module 8, brass, choirs, and hybrid layers. This feels like where the track gets that truly epic, larger-than-life scale.
Absolutely. This is the module about maximum sonic impact. How do you get those moments that make people sit up and take notice? It talks about using brass powerful steps, short hits, maybe longer swells to punctuate those critical moments, the peaks of your dynamic art.
Making those buildups really pay off.
Precisely. And choirs. Not necessarily singing words, but used as these massive, epic textural pads, adding emotional weight, grandeur, just sheer scale.
But it also mentions hybrid layers. What does that mean? Brass plus synths.
Yes, that's a huge part of the modern trailer sound. This module apparently teaches how to create unique sonic signatures by layering the power and acoustic complexity of real brass with carefully chosen synthetic sounds. Maybe saw waves, square waves, filtered noise.
Why do that?
To add thickness, density, maybe a futuristic or aggressive edge that pure brass doesn't have. And crucially, it helps the brass cut through an incredibly dense mix. Those hybrid sounds have become a staple. And then there's the focus on sync-friendly rise and hit techniques.
Making those transitions really pop.
Yeah, designing risers that build tension perfectly, leading into massive impacts or downbeats that are timed precisely for visual cuts. Explosive, clean, and edited for function.
Got it. So we have the rhythmic drive, the impact layers. What's left? Module 9, sound design and atmospheric layers. This sounds like the final polish, the glue that holds it together.
It really is. It's about adding that cinematic depth, that sense of space and atmosphere that separates a professional track from something that feels a bit empty or unfinished.
So we're talking pads, drones.
Yes, creating or manipulating pads, ambient drones, subtle textures that fill out the sonic landscape without getting in the way. But it's also about the more functional sound design elements, risers, whooshes, subdrops, impacts, transition effects, things that guide the listener, and crucially the editor, through the track's structure.
And doing this within Cubase.
That seems to be a key point. Leveraging Cubase's own tools, things like the sampler track for manipulating sounds, the built-in effects suite, maybe even tools like PadShot for granular textures. The idea is to blend electronic and orchestral atmospheres seamlessly, making the sound design feel integrated, cohesive, part of the production environment, not just random samples dropped in at the end.
Okay, we've arrived at phase 4. The track is composed, orchestrated, polished. Now comes the crucial step, delivering it correctly. Module 10, mixing hybrid productions in Cubase. This sounds like the ultimate challenge, balancing programmed drums, live rock guitars, maybe vocals, and a full orchestra in one cohesive mix.
It really is the technical Everest for many producers attempting this. This is where so many potentially great tracks fall apart. The module promises specific mixing strategies designed precisely for this sonic balancing act.
What kind of strategies?
Well, things like specialized EQ approaches for these incredibly dense mixes. Knowing exactly how and where to carve out frequency space, especially in that crowded low mid-range where the bass, cellos, heavy guitars, and synth pads all want to live, giving each element its own sonic real estate.
Avoiding that mud we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Meticulous gain staging right from the start is emphasized, which is vital when you're dealing with orchestral sample libraries that can have enormous dynamic ranges. And careful dynamic balance across all these disparate elements.
And they mention a specific technique. Parallel compression for power. Why is that so important here? Can you elaborate?
Sure. Parallel compression, sometimes called New York compression, is incredibly useful in hybrid mixes because you often have conflicting needs. Take the drums. You need the sharp, clean punch of the hip-hop kick or snare transient, but you also want the sustained energy and perceived loudness of the big cinematic percussion, like taikos or toms.
Right, standard compression might squash the punch or make the big drum sound thin.
Precisely. With parallel compression, you duplicate the drum percussion track or send it to an O. One track stays relatively uncompressed, the dry signal, preserving those vital transients. The other track, the wet signal, gets compressed heavily, sometimes brutally.
Okay.
Then you blend that heavily compressed wet signal back in underneath the dry signal. The result. You keep the punch and clarity of the original transients, but you add the sustain, density, and perceived energy from the heavily compressed signal. It makes the whole rhythmic foundation sound incredibly powerful and unified, but without sacrificing the initial hit.
Ah, best of both worlds. Power and punch.
Exactly. It's tailor-made for making hybrid drums hit hard while still letting the rest of the mix, like the orchestra, breathe. And the module also covers creating spatial depth using reverbs, delays, panning to place the huge orchestra convincingly behind the core rock or hip-hop elements, creating a sense of scale.
Okay, mix nailed. But sounding good isn't enough for sync. Module 11. Sync-ready arrangement strategies. This is purely about structure for placement, right? Commercial necessity.
100%. This is about thinking like an editor or music supervisor. The core lesson is functional composition. You have to master structuring tracks for easy placement. Clear intro, well-defined build-up section, and obvious climax point.
And those button endings you mentioned.
Yes, crucial. A button ending means the track stops cleanly or precisely on a beat, often with a final impact or a sudden silence. No long fade-outs. Editors need that clean-cut point. Fades often kill the energy needed for scene transitions in ads or trailers.
So structure is king. What else?
Designing sections that allow for flexible sync cuts, meaning an editor could potentially loop a section or cut from the build-up straight to the outro, or use just the intro without it sounding musically awkward or abrupt. Building in that modularity.
And the deliverables.
Absolutely vital. Mastering the industry's standard delivery formats, providing clean, well-labeled stems, the separate instrument groups, drums, bass, guitars, strings, brass, FX, etc. Providing underscores, which are mixes typically with the main melody or lead instrument removed, perfect for sitting under dialogue. And creating precise cut downs, 0.60, 0.30, maybe even 0.15 second versions, edited perfectly to time.
If you can't deliver those,
your amazing track might just sit on the shelf. You're making the editor's job harder, so they'll likely just move on to a track that is compliant.
right. Which brings us to the finish line. Module 12, final project, from beat to sync banger. The proof is in the pudding.
Exactly. This is the capstone. You take a basic beat hip-hop or rock and apply everything learned across the previous 11 modules. The Cubase workflow, the hybrid layering, the orchestration, the mixing, the sync-ready arrangement.
Transforming it step by step.
Yeah, into a fully finished, professionally polished, sync-ready track. It concludes with preparing the final export package, the full mix, the stems, the underscores, the cut downs, all ready for pitching. So you don't just finish the course with knowledge, you finish with a tangible, portfolio-ready commercial asset. Proof you can do the work.
Wow. Okay, that 12-module journey sounds incredibly thorough. It really does seem like a systematic A to Z approach addressing that core problem we started with. Now let's pivot to the results. Does this methodology actually work in the real world?
Well, the testimonials they provide are pretty compelling evidence. Take Chris D., who said, "Now I'm producing hybrid cues that actually sound like trailer music. My first track got accepted into a sync library." I mean, that's the goal right there.
Yeah.
Immediate, tangible result, getting a track accepted. That speaks volumes about moving beyond guesswork.
Yeah, placement is the ultimate validation. And what about the Cubase-specific aspect? We know Cubase is powerful, but can feel complex.
Mariana L's comment addresses that directly. Cubase always felt overwhelming. This course made it my best friend. I finished with 3 hybrid cues I'm proud to pitch. So it seems the workflow training in Module 4 really does help tame the beast and turn it into a creative partner for this specific task. Finishing with multiple pitch-ready cues is huge.
And that AI coach element we discussed, does it live up to the hype?
Jamal R. certainly thought so. The AI coach blew my mind. It gave me instant orchestration fixes while I was arranging. Total game changer. That phrase, instant orchestration fixes, points directly to overcoming that feedback bottleneck. If it delivers on that promise, it really could be a disruptive element in learning this level of production. A game changer, as he puts it.
Okay, so the results seem promising. Let's talk value versus cost. This kind of specialized knowledge, hybrid orchestration, sync mixing, specific DIW workflow, getting that one-on-one would be expensive, right?
Oh, easily. Hiring a dedicated sync mentor who understands all these facets, the music, the tech, and the business side of sync, you're definitely looking at $2,000, probably more, for any significant amount of time.
And then there's the cost of just buying tools without knowing how to use them effectively. Big orchestral libraries aren't cheap.
Exactly. Producers drop $500, $1,000, maybe more on sample libraries, hoping they're the magic bullet. But without the system, the framework for how to actually integrate them into a hybrid track and mix them properly, that money is largely wasted. You just end up with more potential clutter.
So comparing that to the cost of this immersion.
The value proposition is pretty stark.
Yeah.
This entire 12-week program, covering the A to Z system, the Cubase specifics, the mixing, the sync arrangement, the AI coach, it's listed at $97.
Like $7.
Yeah, and it's kind of unbelievable, frankly. You're paying less than the price of one decent VST plugin for what's positioned as a complete career-shifting system for this niche. It fundamentally reframes the investment. It's not just buying information, it's buying a pathway to potential commercial viability.
And for people getting in early, there's extra incentive. the founding member status.
Right. That typically means a limited time offer, locking in that $97 price, and access to some significant bonuses before the price likely goes up later.
What are the bonuses?
They're pretty substantial, valued much higher than the course cost itself. First, the Sync Blueprint Pack valued at $297. That sounds like those pre-built Cubase templates, maybe cue maps, checklists, basically resources to accelerate the workflow even faster. Saves hours of setup.
Practical tools. Nice.
Then, the Hybrid Drum and Guitar Sample Pack, valued at $197. These aren't just random samples. They're described as custom-made for the course, meaning they're likely engineered sonically to fit perfectly within the mixing and layering techniques being taught. Drop-in ready sounds for the specific style.
Cuts down on searching for the right sound.
Exactly. And finally, bridging the gap to the actual business. The exclusive sync pitching webinar, valued at $147. This sounds like insider knowledge, how to actually take the tracks you create in the course and effectively pitch them to music libraries, supervisors, the people who actually license music.
So it closes the loop. Production to placement strategy.
Seems like it. The whole package aims to be comprehensive.
Okay, so the key details for launch. Doors open November 25, 2025. Founding member status, and these bonuses are limited.
Correct, and they offer a 60-day money-back guarantee, which, for an advanced producer considering this, essentially removes the financial risk. Try it, see if the system works for you, and if not, you're covered.
For $97 and a guarantee, it feels like a very low-risk, potentially high-reward opportunity for Cubase users stuck at that cinematic wall.
It really does seem positioned that way. Specialized, high-leverage training for a very specific in-demand skill set. #tag outro.
So wrapping this deep dive up, if you're out there listening, you're an advanced producer, maybe primarily in hip-hop or rock, and you recognize that gap we've been talking about, that frustrating chasm between your musical ideas, your talent, and the actual technical structural demands of getting placed in sync, in trailers, in ads.
Then this course, Hybrid Orchestration for Hip-Hop and Rock in Cubase, seems to offer a very clear engineered framework. A blueprint to move past just making beats or loops and towards systematically creating tracks inside Cubase that are built from the ground up for commercial success.
It directly tackles that technical problem of cluttered, muddy mixes when combining genres.
And the crucial commercial problem of delivering tracks that aren't properly structured or formatted for sync. It aims to solve both sides of the equation.
What's really fascinating looking at the industry landscape is that the demand for this kind of high-impact hybrid music keeps growing. Trailers, games, ads, they all want unique, powerful sounds.
But, and this is the key, the number of producers who can consistently deliver sounds that hit the creative brief and meet all those strict technical and structural standards for placement, that number is still relatively small.
So mastering this specific niche, the precise integration of rock hip-hop energy with orchestral scale and cinematic mixing.
It's not just about improving your skills as a musician. It's potentially about turning your existing talent, your beats, into genuinely valuable, licensable commercial assets. Assets that are ready for the global sync market.
Which leaves us with that final thought, that provocative question the course implicitly asks. What cinematic scene, what trailer, what game is waiting for your hybrid banger once it's engineered with this kind of precision?
A powerful question. If you're ready to find the answer, ready to secure your spot as a founding member and get those bonuses, the place to go is schoolonx.com. You can join the waitlist now.
Your transformation, your path from generic beats to cinematic bangers starts November 25th. Check it out at schoolonx.com.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.